Okay, well, I have a reading, two readings actually, but one to begin with, and that's Martin Luther King, in his Nobel Peace Prize address. He said the second evil which plagues the modern world is that of poverty. Like a monstrous octopus, it projects its nagging, prehensile tentacles in lands and villages all over the world. Almost two-thirds of the peoples of the world go to bed hungry at night. They are undernourished, ill-housed, and shabbily clad. Many of them have no houses or beds to sleep in. Their only beds are the sidewalks of the cities and the dusty roads of the villages. Most of these poverty-stricken children of God have never seen a physician or a dentist. Uh, okay. I think Jane is here for our financial end, how we're doing money-wise. And I might tell a little story because included in our finances, we had a $16,900 or $860 check that was a fraudulent check that was drawn on our account. And that's over half of our money. And without that money, it was going to mean big time fundraising. And we like to do the social justice work more than we like to do fundraising. So we were really taken aback. And the bank told us that obviously this is a fraudulent check and you get your money, but after about 5 months of diddling, it started in July, and in the first part of December, the bank informed our treasurer that they weren't going to cover that check. And Carl McCargo went into the bank. Oh no, he went into the senator
Warren.
Oh boy. Senator
Warren.
Yes, Senator Warren's office. And we assume, must have said something because within 24 hours, the money was back in our account. But I learned one thing. I didn't know that you could buy a check printer that puts the magnetic numbers and everything. You can just print out your own checks. Who knew they were able to do that? But it was pretty easy. But 16,000, wow, a big chunk of our money.
Terry,
Okay, I think
Terry, the slides document the treasurer's report.
I was going to ask for that. There are, if you can put up the slides for the annual meeting, that'll give people numbers to look at rather than just listening to me.
And I can do it, but it's going to compromise my ability to take minutes.
No, just a second. I'll take a minute. I don't multitask much anymore. I was in the restaurant business. I had to do it there, but I find my quality goes down when I multitask. Okay.
Well, you'll find that a brief plug for our upcoming conference in Washington, D.C. on September 26th through 28th, which you'll hear more about as we go.
Terry, if you can do it, this compromises my ability to take minutes. But I think we're not going to have a lot of questions.
That wasn't too bad. Here we are.
You can
and
go
the
into
agenda
you
and
can
Chuck
slide. Terry,
and
you
finance.
slide
Here's
view.
the treasurer's report.
Terry, don't stay and edit. You slide view. Launch from within PowerPoint. Launch the slideshow, and then share that window.
We got it right there.
No, that's the edit. That's the edit screen.
Okay, back to where we were.
Tell you what, I'll do it. Stop sharing.
Stop sharing. Oh, okay.
Stop sharing. I'll do it.
I can do that too. Stop share. Okay.
Share. Now, I hope you let me share.
No, I think it's set up for that.
All right. Now you can probably see the.
Okay.
Yeah, full screen. What do you know?
So here's our report for 2022. And as Terry mentioned, kind of through the back door, Carl McCargo and I worked together on a lot of these treasurer duties. And luckily we had him in Massachusetts with that link to Senator Warren when we ran into this fraudulent check. And it does show you how dependent we are and how we have to just, I don't know, it's too bad we have to be so on guard about these things. Anyway, for last year through December of 2022, we had total income of approximately $24,000. We budgeted $29,000. We're still showing less income and less expense than normal, I think due to COVID. We're not doing as much in-person work anymore, at least at the moment, or haven't been. Our total individual donations were about $5,700 when we budgeted 85, and congregational donations of 750. I think, like a lot of UU groups, the pandemic has somewhat slowed down for us. The grant figure there looks fairly pathetic, but we didn't actually go off after any grants. We decided not to have an in-person conference last year, so we didn't really try to receive any grants. That was just a small grant from the UUA for our programming at General Assembly last year. The total expenses were over $30,000, of which about 2,200 of it was program expenses. That's a very narrow definition. It doesn't even have our General Assembly booth in there. And the remaining was for administrative expenses. We ended the bank with a bank balance of about $29,000. And Terry has told you the fraudulent check story, basically, so we could skip that. As of through June, 50% of the year, our total income is only $2,100, little less than $2,000 in donations, though we budgeted about $6,700 for the year. That's not too unusual, since most of our income, at least from individuals, comes in at the end of the year when we have our annual appeal. We did, however, and this is actually it occurred in July. I just wanted to make sure to mention it. So it's not in those budgeted numbers through June. We did receive, though, a $12,000 grant. We just received it a week ago for what we are planning to do at our at a in-person conference in Washington, D.C., which you'll hear more about. But the UU funding program generously contributed that money so that we can have great programming and provide for scholarships for people that need it, and really do a good job visiting our Congress people about the climate and the Farm Bill. So at any rate, back through June, our expenses have been really kept in pretty closely in check. Expenses of about $6,000. We have most of our bills in from General Assembly, and we kept to the expenses pretty well with that. Our administrative expenses, which are predominantly expenses for Rachel, our wonderful administrative assistant, are only about $4,000. So far throughout the year, our expenses are pretty low, although once we do the conference, I'm sure that'll change pretty drastically. But we do currently have a bank balance of a bit over $24,000. A few months ago, we took out a certificate of deposit just to earn a bit of interest. I believe it's 3.5% or 4%. But we wanted to get money out of TD Bank, which was the large bank that gave us trouble with that fraudulent check, and into a community bank that puts money into the neighborhood. So that's what was done with $10,000 of that money. So it's included in the $24,000. And that's basically the financial report.
Questions
Be
or
glad to
comments on finance before we move to another topic?
Excuse me, what about finance? Kit?
Are there questions or comments about finance before we move to
Oh,
another
sorry,
topic?
comments. Okay, yep, great.
None? Cool.
I think she covered it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Lucy, are you in the mood to talk?
Well, I'll be brief. We meet once a month on the third Wednesday of the month. We'd love to have more people join our Green New Deal task force. We look at legislation that's in the offing that we could write letters about and inform people about. We still care about Citizens United having been passed because as we've looked at the organization that shows how our congresspeople are bought, it's very clear that money is often in control of what happens in legislation. So that has to be before us, and we will work to change it, but I can't say much is happening on that right now. We do have a check-in in our meetings, and I think that's important, and I'm hoping that we'll even do more with that in the future because people are coming into despair, and I think the best thing we can offer is hope. And action brings hope. So I'm thinking that in our meetings in the future, I hope that we'll share what action we've done in the last week, whether it's as simple as having a vegetarian meal on Friday or whatever, to what we've advocated for in our towns or our state or federally, because I think those stories give us courage to keep going and hope that we will make a difference. And as in my question with Chuck, I'm very concerned that we build community and that communities support one another to do the actions to stop further climate change. The real focus of our particular Green New Deal work is not to give up, that we can have a chance to change things so that the temperature stops rising. We're not so much on mutual aid, which is in another part of our organization. It's we will keep working to stop climate change. But please join us.
Oh, good. Okay.
Thank you, Lucy. It's a good meeting.
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
Bob, are you ready?
Great.
Somebody's having a side conversation, needs to kill the microphone.
Thanks for calling.
All right.
And,
I wish.
Will, too. That was great.
Okay.
And we'll
Thank-
see.
Terry, close all the microphones and let the individuals who need to talk open them.
Okay,
All
let's
right,
see how I do that.
I wish that Judy Deutsch were here because she deserves much of the credit for what you're seeing on your screen with healthcare now. I don't know what's in the background.
Terry, Alt M.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, I'm gonna mute everybody. Bob, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Judy Deutsch deserves much of the credit for the healthcare task force for the UUJEC, and she's dedicated much of her ministry for several decades to working for national health insurance. So I want to acknowledge that, and I regret that Judy is not with us for this report. The big news for organized religion and everything else in the world, including the Unitarian Universalists, for at least 3 years, has been the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been a watershed moment in the history of humanity. But if we just focus for the minute on Unitarian Universalists, I know congregations that have collapsed completely, that'll probably never reopen. Two actually have lost their buildings in Florida. There are probably others. The association has lost members, and this is true with other organized religious groups. I want to acknowledge also just how hard COVID-19 has hit organized religion, has hit Unitarian Universalists. And despite what the official reports say, it's not really over. We continue to have COVID-19 related deaths here in Florida, which is where I am, and in the rest of the country. The crisis continues, particularly in institutions like prisons, nursing homes, and similar places where people are crowded together and where they frequently don't receive adequate care. The UUJEC has consistently been the lead organization in the UUA that really calls for new ways of thinking, new strategies, systemic change, trying to improve the way healthcare happens in the United States. Much now, just to focus on the last year, in the 2022 General Assembly, Judy pushed for an AIW in opposition to managed healthcare. This year, a lot of our in the last 12 months, you see some of it on the screen, but one of the things that started to develop was the Organizing for Health Equity statement, which started in part because of conversations in the UUJC all the way back to last fall. Initially, we talked about the importance of nutrition and food justice, and that expanded somewhat as some of the Florida congregations got involved. So we passed a statement, which the UUJC endorsed at the General Assembly, calling attention to the need for systemic change and just a new vision in the way that healthcare happens. Obviously, what happens in medical insurance is extremely important. So we continue to support a national healthcare system, Medicare for all. But to improve and protect the health of the nations requires just an altogether new emphasis on healing and wellness and related concerns. Mutual aid has been mentioned today. And that's how you get healthy people and other creatures too, for that matter. And we think about personal wellness, but we also think about social and environmental wellness. And all of these things are in the health equity statement. Chuck mentioned getting seniors involved with climate change and other issues. We've given some emphasis, we being the UUJC, to really doing more empowerment work with seniors. We had a program at the General Assembly, a video, Radical Grannies and Gray Panthers, with different people speaking about elder activism. We did a webinar in May for Older Americans Month. And so we've made our contribution there, and very similar to what Bill McKibben is doing with Third Act. And there are other radical groups that are springing up, Radical Elders, the Gray Panthers making a comeback, and there's several others that should be mentioned. So these are all health-related things. The UUJEC has done a great deal in the last 3 years. And historically organized religion has often emphasized healing and health protection. So we follow in that tradition. And I look forward to the coming months. And I thank everybody, but especially Judy Deutsch, who has carried much of this good work for the UUJC for more than a few years. I don't know what else to say.
I think you covered everything, didn't you? The
May I
workshops, although
briefly
you
mention that we are co-sponsoring with Radical Elders a virtual screening of the film Cooked: Survival by Zip Code, about
thank you, Sal.
in Chicago in 1995. So watch for info.
That movie is extremely important if you want to understand climate change and health equity. If your goal is to bring these topics together, health equity and climate change, and if you're concerned about racial justice and class issues, watch that movie, which Sally has promoted now for quite a while. So thank you, Sally. And there's a trailer on YouTube which helps to explain it if you want to look at that movie. But that movie is excellent. Thank you, Sally. And thank you, UUJC.
Yeah. Okay, Jane, are you able to fill us in on reparations? I think Carl was here earlier. You need to mute or unmute.
Sorry. Like Bob, I'm sorry that our major motivator, Carl McCargo, isn't with us at the moment, but I'll do my best to fill in for him. We were able to pass an AIW in support of reparations at last year's, a year ago, GA. And we've been working, our reparations committee has been working to forward that. We're developing and disseminating a curriculum that congregations can use to inform themselves and gain support for the reparations movement. You can check it out at the website, or talk to Carl or me to find out more about it. We presented a workshop, a recorded one, which I think you still can have access to if you registered for GA this year, on reparations at this year's General Assembly. It presented the curriculum and encouraged people to use it, of course, but we had two additional speakers, Reverend Kristen Harper, who did just a bang up column about the way we look at darkness and what black means, and how it is, what its the repercussions of our feelings throughout society. She did a great column in the UU World on that, and kind of expanded on it as part of our workshop. And we also heard from Nina Cavan, who is a resident of Evanston. I happen to go to the Evanston church, and Nina spoke about the importance of white allies in the reparations effort. As you might know, Evanston is one of the first municipalities to set up their own private reparations program, and Nina has both a great personal story and an interesting and has just done a bang up job in gaining support in Evanston for the program. So anyway, that was our workshop for this year. We are recruiting new members. We're kind of taking a bit of a break over the summer, having worked fairly diligently on this workshop. But if you're interested in the committee, we certainly would love to have you. And just post a message or to at uujec.org, and we'd love to have you join us, or send me or Carl an email. Thanks.
Take it away, Bob. Mr. Murphy.
But I'm supposed to say something, or?
Yeah, this is your topic, Bob.
Labor Day.
Oh, Labor Day. Okay, I'm off on the agenda here. Well, there's a man named Kit Marlowe in New Jersey, as I recall, who's been working on Labor Day issues for the UUJEC for 6 or 7 years now, according to the records. We have been doing this. What we do is we reach out to congregations and clusters and state action networks and others. We encourage them to do an appropriate event for the Labor Day weekend. It might be a Sunday service. It might be participating in a Labor Day parade or some other activity. We have a toolkit, which I think got developed a couple of years ago. This year, we're encouraging people to use the video with the AFL-CIO, which we developed for the General Assembly. And one of the reasons that video is so important is, instead of focusing on labor history, and that's often what Labor Day events do, we talk about coal mines 100 years ago or whatever, but the UUJEC has brought the labor conversation into the 21st century. So we're talking about issues that are of immediate concern, and we recognize the workforce has changed during the last 100 years. So this is part of what we're doing as outreach. It's a big event for the UUJC. Labor Day is one of our special days, and we'll do a mailing very soon. We've already started to do some early outreach, and I don't know when that General Assembly video will be shown. We're thinking about showing it as a webinar, but I hope we get that on the calendar, if it's not on the calendar already.
Yeah, Bob, the General Assembly rules said that they were going to reveal or release the videos on the 1st of September, and I thought that was a little too early. Terry managed to get that video available for viewing already. So anybody
Thank you,
who
Terry.
wants to see that video can just contact Terry.
Yeah,
Actually-
one of the nice things, just very quickly, thank you, Terry, and thank you, Kit. One of the nice things about doing these videos for the General Assembly, we get the audience at the GA, but then we've got these things in our library. We can use them for the next 10 years if we want. They make great webinars, or they can be used in a variety of ways. So that's about it.
If somebody who's participating today doesn't feel like they can do a Labor Day Sunday sermon, we can certainly provide enough support so they can.
Yeah. But it is a very big event for the UUJC. It's become an annual event, and very important for our outreach work. Thank you.
Just to pull together all of our workshops at GA. Let's see, we had the reparations, the next step in reparations, and then we have working with labor, and Gray Panthers and Raging Grannies, and wellness and mutual aid. And these are all on our website under GA, which is right next to home. It's the second one from the left, the second link. Let's see, what's next here? Oh, you've got that.
You jumped the agenda, sir.
Jump the agenda. I'm sorry. Okay. I guess Dick is going to give a rundown on General Assembly.
I thought that since Dick went,
I can do that now or later, anytime.
and it seems to me that he's already covered the on-demand workshops.
So, you want me to say something, or?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Just talk about what went on at GA with UUJEC.
Yeah, so we had a UUJC booth in the exhibit hall, and there weren't as many in-person people as they have been in GA's 4 years ago, but there was still a worthwhile number of people. And for me, the best part of the GA was actually talking to people at the booth. We had former board members like John Gilmore who showed up, and I had several nice conversations with him. Who's the other one that Lucy knows? Another board member from Las Vegas now. So we had a number of people who were active in UUJC, but then there were some people who didn't know much about UUJC, but were certainly in our camp in many ways, and that was perhaps the most interesting. There's some really active people in different congregations, very thoughtful people, and many of them were wishing for better leadership from the UUJC on some issues like the international issues and especially on, of course, climate change kinds of things too. So some of these people I was able to get interested in the fall conference, and I expect that will attract a good crowd there. The other big thing I talked about came up was the voting in the General Assembly. And the first thing was on the elections, which were, there were just two elections that were actually meant something in some way. One was for the new president, Sophia Bentoncourt, where you could vote yes or no or not vote at all, abstain. And the other was my own election, where I was running for the nominating committee just to see if we could give people an option. It's been years since anyone has contested a position on the nominating committee or some of these other lesser committees. I think we did have last year a couple of people who ran for the UUA board by petition. But if anyone is thinking about that, I was able to get 98 signatures in 38 congregations in 1 week, mostly in 3 or 4 days. And the minimum required to run for any kind of office, elected office like that, is 50 signatures, not more than 10 from any congregation. So they want it spread out somewhere. But that's a very doable thing, and I just decided a week before the deadline, well, why not? No one else is running, why don't I run? You see. But that brings up what actually happened. It turns out at this year's GA, we have a sort of a very kind of, I would say very, almost like a political party system. There's this one large group of delegates, about 3/4 of the delegates, who vote in lockstep with the board or with the Article 2 Study Commission or whoever that they're in tune with. And from my position, there was a candidates forum on May 31st, and we had a number of questions and answers. And of course, being a dissident, I wasn't part of this 3/4 majority group. But and I didn't get elected. In fact, I had about 26, 28% of the vote, depends how you measure it actually. But I actually did better than I had expected, because last year for the UUA board, there were 2 dissident candidates, and each of them only got 10% of the vote. And I figured this year that I would get more than that, maybe up to 20%, 25%, because this year the whole issue of the 7 principles had become very big, and many more people have become dissidents. And I agree that we needed to retain the 7 principles. So I actually compared, it was a long ways from actually getting elected, which would have taken a majority. But I did very well compared to last year, because there's a growing movement of dissidents against being sort of being told that you ought to do this or that. There's kind of a groupthink mentality out there, almost like in the when they voted for the amendments to Article 2. It started out with the UA board lavishing massive praise on the Article 2 Study Commission. And then on each proposed amendment, I think they got through 13 in over 2 days. If the Article 2 Study Commission didn't like the amendment, one of their members got up and made a testimony against it. And that testimony determined the outcome. In every case where that happened, they said, we'll vote down this amendment. It went down by like 72 to 80% or more. And the other ones, if people sort of supported them, they were often 70 or 80% in favor. So we're in a situation where people seem to be taking cues as to how to vote rather than thinking through individually. In the past, I think people thought through some of these things a bit more and decide, well, I don't go along with that, or I do go along with this. And now it's more like they're not thinking through things, they haven't studied it carefully, and they're just following cues, in this case from the board and Article 2 Study Commission. And so that is somewhat disturbing to some of us, that we have the form of democracy, but it's not really working that way because there have not been, in the larger congregations or the districts we used to have, there have not been these extensive conversations with pro and con, and when the UUA has gotten involved, it's usually been in a kind of a salesmanship mode of just presenting their position in something. And many of us would like to see a more extensive involvement in congregations, pro and con next year, at the vote next year, and for future work on the bylaws.
Dick, did Article 2 pass?
But the Article 2, at this stage, it requires a 2/3 vote to pass next year.
Mhm.
And that was assuming that this year it got 50% of the vote or more. And even though most of these amendments that did pass only got like 3/4 of the vote typically, the vote to go forward one more year was like 86%. And if you understand that, is the UUA board has been saying, well, if you have some doubts, just vote yes on this, so we have another year of conversation. And so about 12% of the people who probably would have voted against it decide, oh yeah, we want another year of conversation, maybe we can get some further changes. But the way it's set up, there will be almost certainly no other changes. If you read the bylaws, the Article 2 Commission has 6 months to come up with a revised version of their proposal, presumably based solely on the amendments that were passed. And that's going to be pretty straightforward. You just look at what they had originated, look at the amendments, and sort of put them together with a few minor tweaks so they are coherent. Then after that, there's no other possibility of changing, no matter how much you discuss that proposal, unless you get 3/4 of the delegates, to vote for an amendment. Now this year, amendment required like 50%, but at the GA next year, if anyone proposes an amendment, it would require 3/4, and that amendment could only come from the board or from a group of, I think, 15 congregations or something like that. And in practice, that kind of change would never happen, judging by what happened this year. The only way you could have an actual amendment in 2024 would be if it was endorsed by both the board and the Article 2 Study Commission. If both of them agreed to it, that would probably be the cue for this 3/4 of the delegates to vote that way. Otherwise, they would vote it down.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of comments on that.
Yeah,
There is a Slack set up for people who want to work further on amendments. And I can forward that. We can forward that for.
One of the issues is that when I read the bylaws carefully, the Article 2 Study Commission can actually do whatever it wants right now. They're only obligated to produce a final version of their proposal within 6 months of the General Assembly. But the moderator, Charles Dumont, has been very active in this, co-moderator. He said he expects the Article 2 Commission to just make minimal changes so that it reads well when you add the amendments.
Right. But
and so it's coherent. So, but
there is a non-official group who have set up a Slack to discuss some of the amendments that didn't go through and to try and get the 15 congregations needed.
But that could be happen, but again, that won't go anywhere as far as I can tell, unless you get the Article 2 Commission on board and the board on board.
Well, if you give up first, definitely it'll go nowhere.
Yeah, you have to go, but I'm thinking that
my other comment was on terms of the your election. I think people reacted to the board and the investment committee's commentary on the divestment reparations resolution and were upset with the heavy-handedness, and I think you benefited from that, though not enough. And I don't know what else is out there.
Yeah, I think that was separate from my election, but let me, what I was saying before, I think it could be valuable right now to just inundate the Article 2 Study Commission with suggestions as to how this final version should actually happen. Because they actually have the authority to do anything they want. Dumont expects them to do minimal stuff, but we could put a lot of pressure on them to say, we really want to keep the 7 principles as a separate entity. And that was voted down because one of the members of the commission didn't want it.
Well, actually, it was included within the Article 2, the amended, including it within the Article 2 was voted down. Nobody's saying that it can't be a separate entity somewhere else, but.
Well,
Yeah.
no, but among the amendments that were considered, there was only one that kept the 7 principles as is, as a separate entity. And
Within the Article 2.
And it introduced them as historical too. But even with the historical, saying these were historical and they're prefatory to the values and covenants, even that did not pass, which kind of surprised me. But didn't pass because the Article 2 Commission came out against it. I think if they'd come out forward, it would have passed.
Okay,
Are
we ready to?
I want to say one more thing on my vote. I think the reparations vote was entirely separate. The board came out against, I mean, not the reparations, the disvestment. The board came out against the disvestment for technical reasons. They thought that the things were so complicated financially that they needed to look far more carefully at the exact.
They were very heavy-handed in their put down.
Yeah, but again, this shows the power of the board. The board decided they recommend against it, and I think they had some valid issues on that. And the youth.
I don't.
But the youth did a walkout and a protest, but instead of the board position getting 75%, it only got 68%. So even with the youth rebelling against it, it only lost maybe 7 or 8% on the 75% voting block I was talking about.
Well, I don't think there's such a formal block, but okay.
Yeah, it's an informal block, but it's definitely there. And on my vote, on my office, when I was running for it, what happens?
We're running about 15 minutes late. Can we move on to the upcoming plans?
Let me just say the last thing on this.
Okay.
That causes people to vote against me, to know that I was a dissident, and this was, of course, carefully engineered, was that one of the questions was on what do you think about white supremacy culture in the UUA? And I don't buy into the terminology of white supremacy culture. I think it's damaging to our larger society. It's causing some of this political polarization. So I just said so. I think that's the wrong terminology. We need to have a better terminology. Everyone else went along with that terminology, and that was the cue they were looking for, the 3/4. That's the kind of thinking. If you went along with the white supremacy culture terminology, then you were in this voting block.
Ready to vote?
That's enough.
Okay.
We don't have, we don't need to talk about membership if you don't want to.
I think we'll skip that, but Sally, you were going to talk about upcoming plans. Do you want me to talk about the conference?
It's on the next slide.
Okay, that's me, I guess. Farming for the Future, Systemic Change for Healthy Soil, Food, and Community. In Washington, D.C., September 26th through the 28th. It's co-sponsored by UUMFE, that's Ministry for the Earth, UU's for Social Justice, UUASI with Love. I haven't even told the board this. They're giving us $500 for the conference, so we're getting a broad coalition to work on it. And we got a $12,000 grant from the UU funding program. The reason we're talking about farming is not that we think we have a lot of UU farmers. In Iowa, I think we located about 6 or 8 UU farmers, and I'm part of that group, but we don't actually farm it. We're the farm managers. But the reason is this year, the main bill that we have that we can make a difference is the farm bill. And I like to point out that regenerative farming, uh, sustainable farming can remove 178 billion tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. And that's the equivalent of 157 parts per million. So instead of 400 and some parts per million, we could actually get it down to under 300 parts per million. It's wonky, I know, but that's pre-industrial levels. Farming can do it, and they can talk about technology. Well, technology is just a way to make somebody money, but they've not done anything that can remove hardly any CO2 from the atmosphere. A ton or two here and there, but that's when you're talking billion tons, that doesn't do much. So we'll spend the first 2 days learning about it. I think we're going to have a musical event on Wednesday. This is not for sure, though. These are plans up in the air. And we're going to deal with climate grief because I think a lot of us have a lot of really difficult feelings about climate. When you can't go outside because of the smoke or the heat, when heat is killing hundreds of people in the United States where we have air conditioning, and thousands of people in Europe because they don't have much air conditioning, they didn't need it. We have a problem. So, and I started to talk about Rosalie Goes Shopping, and it's like, well, no, I did mention it. If you murder a person, you go to prison for it. But if you murder 1 million people or kill 1 million people through climate change, that we pay you extra for doing that. At any rate, I think this is going to be a really interesting conference. There are some wonderful speakers. We're asking Cory Booker to speak. And if he can't, maybe his chief of staff will be able to fill in. Both of them are very eloquent on farming and climate issues. Sally, did you have anything you wanted to talk about on upcoming events?
I mentioned the screening of Cooked.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess the conference is up next. I don't think we have any specific webinars set up yet, but we'll be working on those. But I will put in a plug for our forum on uujec.net/forum, where we can actually have conversations that are more open than a small email group. So check that out.
Okay. And conference ? Community conversation moderator Kit Marlowe. Did you have something you wanted to add, Kit?
I'm sorry, you mean about, I was getting back to the minutes. What did you just
Okay. I pulled this off the agenda that went out several days ago. So did we cover everything that you had in mind that we should cover?
Those were all the slides.
Yeah,
I had
I think
provided a list of historic webinars, but we don't need to talk about that.
I think the idea
Okay.
was if anybody had any questions or comments, Kit would moderate for us.
Okay. Questions and comments? Well, I have a short reading for the end. Again, Martin Luther King. We must see now that the evils of racism, economic exploitation, and militarism are all tied together. You can't get rid of one without getting rid of the other. Thank you, everybody.